things about division. And they're things that are a little bit different than chapter 3, because chapter 3 was all about division. Now chapter 4 is about division too, but they're just little things that are a little bit different. Everything that we're doing is always going to be divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. You're going to have those same steps over and over on every one of these lessons. The difference is that we're looking at different types of problems. So some of these problems look a little bit different because of the numbers. Yesterday, we had 2-digit divisors. Today, we're talking about adjusting our quotient. So here's what that means. When your answer seems like when you're trying to divide and it's not going into the first digit, it doesn't maybe go into the first 2 digits, then you would go all the way out to the 3rd digit. It's about making a good guess. So remember yesterday how I told you we were using estimation a lot to make a good guess when we were doing guess and check. Some people were getting frustrated yesterday during math saying, well, I don't know how many times this number goes in. It's all about guess and check. Sometimes you get lucky and on your very first guess, you guess the right answer. Sometimes you have to make 3 guesses before you find the right answer. It just depends on the problem. So today we're going to talk about where to start with your guess. Okay, and that's all. That's all. We're not really learning anything new. We're just helping to learn. We're learning a new skill that's going to help us with division. We're not learning anything new. We're still doing division today. This is just about where to start with your guess. That's all. So some of you already have that skill because yesterday you did really good with the guess and check and you didn't erase all your work like I told you not to erase your work, remember? And you did really well and some people did good on that. It's just about, some people have a hard time knowing where to start. So when they're kind of unsure about that part, and that's what this lesson is going to help you with. So this is just another strategy to help you. We can try this one. Let's try this one. If we don't have whiteboards today, and that's okay. We won't. If you have a whiteboard, you could do this on your whiteboard. If you don't have a whiteboard, just do it in your notes right there at the top. Here's the problem. It says a number is divided by 8. When the quotient is multiplied by 7, the product is 224. What is the number? And explain how you found the answer. That sounds pretty confusing. So I'm going to try to show you kind of what the numbers are. So you have this quotient. It's multiplied. Okay, a number is divided by 8. Okay, so it's this number that's under here. When you get the quotient, which is going to be up here, is multiplied by 7, you would get 224. Okay? So it's asking you, what is this number? So it's this number right here. Okay? So when some number is divided by 8, when you get the quotient, which is the answer to that division problem, and you multiply it by 7, you're going to get 224. So I think that a strategy for this is going to be working backwards, right? Because you get what the final number is going to be. It's going to be 224. So you're going to have to kind of work backwards to figure out what numbers are going to go into each of those little spots there that we've created. So try to figure it out. This is guess and check a little bit, but we are working backwards. So try to work backwards on this one and figure it out. If you got an answer, I want you to keep your answer to yourself for just a second. Don't tell anyone. Okay, listen really carefully. You had some time to talk it out. Now let's see if what you did was right. If I'm going to work backwards, because my final answer needs to be 224 in this little riddle. If I'm going to work backwards, that means instead of multiplying here, I'm going to divide. Let's see. So 7 goes into 22 3 times. Then 7 goes into 14 twice, which would make your answer here 32. Because, hold on, that's not the final answer. That's not the final answer. They want to know which number is this underneath the bar. Remember, that's where I put the question marks. You have to first figure out what the quotient is, and then you have to, so we're working completely backwards. So, since this is a division problem, if we do the opposite, that'll get us that number. All right. So we did the opposite operation here. We divided 7 into 224. That's how we got 32. And now we have to do the opposite operation right here. So in order to find out this number, it's just like whenever you check your work to a division problem, you multiply the divisor with the quotient. So when you multiply those things, then you should get the answer that goes underneath the bar, or the dividend. So 32 times 8. So your answer should be 256. That's the number that goes under the bar. And then if you want to double check, which you could do 8 into 256, which will give you 32. If you multiply 32 times 7, you will get 224. So this was just a riddle, and it was a little bit about guessing and checking and figuring out how to solve this problem. We needed to just work backwards. All right. It's okay. If you just got part of it, you just got part of it. That's okay. That was the problem of the day. That's not our lesson for today. It was a word problem that we had to try to work through. That's why we did it together. In your notes, I want you to write Chapter 4, Lesson 4, Adjust the Quotient. And then I have a piece of information I want you to write in your notes with a star next to it. Here's what it is. So in your notes, everybody should be busily writing this down into their notebook. We haven't started yet. You're right, I did. This is supposed to be estimate. Estimation. So here's what I need you to write. Use estimation to decide where to start with guess and check. That is your tip for Chapter 4, Lesson 4. And here's what I mean. Just like I said when we started, this needs to be in every single person's notebook, boys. You should be writing this sentence in your notebook. So, we talked about this when we first started this lesson a few minutes ago. I said some people had a hard time figuring out where to start when they were working with guess and check. And they would just pick random numbers, like maybe 9 times, maybe twice. When we were working through some of the problems together, I talked about how we used estimation. So if I said, well, 22 is about 20, and I can easily multiply 20, 40, like I can get a good estimate. It might not be, it's not going to be the exact answer, but it's a good estimate. And that estimate tells you where to start when you're doing your division into big numbers. 22 is something that's close to 20, so then I might be able to estimate it easily. That's what I was saying. If you choose not to use estimation, I'm going to tell you another trick of somewhere you might want to start. You may want to just start by multiplying it by 5. Why do I choose 5? Why do you think I'm choosing 5 as my number?
5 is like an even number between 0 and 10.
So it's like the middle,
the number
right?
In the middle, then you're gonna know. Okay, I either have to go higher or low.
That's exactly the reason why you would start.
It's a good place to start.
Yes. So Vicky,
unless it's age.
Turn around.
You don't want to start.
Listen to the lesson, please. You're not going to understand what to do if you're talking to someone while I'm talking. Here's what Nolan was saying. The reason why I chose 5, he was exactly right, is because it's right in the middle. So if you choose 5 as your place to start on guess and check, it might not be the right answer, but at least it'll give you a place to start. So now you can say, do I need to raise my guess and make it a little bit higher? Maybe you're going to multiply by 7 then, or 8. Maybe it needs to be a little lower and you only need to multiply it by 3 or 4. And so it kind of gives you a good place to start if you're not sure. Estimation is going to give you a much better place to start. But if you aren't sure what to do, start with 5. And 5 is going to give you the middle ground, and then you can either go up or down. So here is your first example. So I have to erase this, and so I've talked enough, I think, that you've been able to write all that down. So here's your first example. 42 dividing into 281. I want you to keep in mind what I just said, which was we are learning nothing new today. The only thing we're doing is we're refining how we're going to guess and check. So we're figuring out exactly where we're going to start with our guesses. That's all. We're still doing divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. The division steps have not changed today. And the problems really look pretty much like they did yesterday. We have 2 numbers on the outside, and we're going to have 3, maybe 4 numbers on the inside, but nothing else has changed. All we're doing is we're really going to be thinking hard today about where we start to when we do our guess and check. And hopefully that means you're going to have to do less work over on the side, right? Because you're going to have to, hopefully you're going to make less guesses. So here's what I'm thinking in my head. 42 doesn't fit into 2. It doesn't fit into 28. So now we have to actually just divide 42 into 281. So we can put little dashes here and here because we're going to have a 1-digit number as our answer. 42 fits into 281. It's a 1-digit answer. Now here's what I want you to draw. Here's what I'm thinking. So I have a little think bubble here. 42 is kind of like 40. If I multiply 40 by, say, 7, what would I get?
Why aren't you doing 42?
What?
280.
So he says, why don't you multiply by 42? I will, but I'm trying to show you where I'm going to start my thought process in my head. So 7 would be 280, but this number is 281. And my number was 42, so I actually lowered it. So I may try 6 because 7 is going to probably be too much. So I know that 4 times 6 is 24. Add the 0 on. So my estimate is about 240. So I'm going to start with 6. So over here on the side, I'm going to do 42 times 6. This part that I just drew in the little think bubble is what you're going to think. It's not going to be necessarily what you write. Okay? If you want to write it, you can. But I'm trying to show you the thought process. That's what this lesson is all about. It's about how you think about where to start with your guess and check. Now, some people may have just gone, 3, and done a guess. You could do that too, and then raise your guess again. But instead of doing that, instead of doing all that work, just think about it for a second. 40 times 6 would be 240. So on the side, I'm going to do 42 times 6 and figure out exactly what that equals. Should be something close to 240. So 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 4 is 24, plus 1 more is 25. So it's 252, and I know that I can't go 7 times because it's going to be too many. So my answer up here would be 6, and then I'm going to write 252, subtract. I'm going to have to borrow here. 29, right? So it's 6, remainder 29. So all we're doing in this lesson that is new is this little think bubble on the side, which, as I just said, you don't have to write, you just have to think it. So the point of this lesson is taking out all that extra work that you might have done yesterday because you weren't sure where to start guessing. So today I want you to really be thinking about those estimates and how we did that in lesson 1 of this chapter, where we talked about estimating. And I want you to really estimate first before you start making guesses. Because you don't want to guess just these wild guesses. You want to make them educated guesses. They want to be guesses that you've thought about first, not just guesses. Okay, let's try another one. So 62 into 238. Here's my thought bubble over here. Draw a think bubble just for your notes, but you won't have to do this in your work. 62 is close to 60. If I multiply 60, remember I'm trying to get close to 238. So think of this, remember how we thought of compatible numbers? So if I'm thinking of 6 and 23, what are some things I could change 23 to? That's close. But I probably want to go down, right? Because it has to be under that number, not above that number. So what's something I could change it to? What do you think, Malachi? Except 6 doesn't go into 20. 6 either goes into 18 or 24, right? One of those two things. So if I did 60 times 4, that would give me 240. That's a little bit too much, right? So then I'm thinking maybe 60 times 3. 6 times 3 is 18, plus that 0. So I think 180, that 3 is going to be about as close as I can probably get without going over. Because remember, I'm dividing 62 all the way into 238. So again, this is your thought process. You just thought about it real quick before you started doing all these multiplication problems on the side. So now I'm going to choose 3 as the number I'm going to start with my guess. So 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 6 is 18, so you get 186. And that's as close as I can get. Because I know that if I multiply 62 times 4, I'm going to get more than 240. And my number is 238 I'm trying to reach. So 240 would be too much. So I'm going to put a 3 up here. And I'm going to put 186 underneath. Then subtract. Borrow again. So I get remainder 52. It's a big remainder. But the number on the outside is still bigger, right? I'm going to say it again. We're not doing anything new today, right? You notice anything new today? We're just doing division. We're finding a remainder. The only thing that's new today is this is supposed to give you a little bit of a better idea of where to start dividing. That's all. Let's do one more example before we do some things on your worksheet. 92, I'm going to let you try this one on your own. Into 632. Think about your think bubble. Okay, watch. That's okay. No, that's not okay. You shouldn't have gotten a remainder that big. Okay, so watch what I do. Let's see what you did. If I'm going to think 92 is pretty close to 100. 100 is super easy to multiply. If I do 100 times 7, 100 times 7 is going to be too much. 100 times 6 will give me 600. So that means I'm going to start with 6 over here when I multiply by 92, which is the actual number. This, in my thought bubble, just an estimate. Just gives me a place of where to start. So put some dashes up here to hold my places. 6 times 2 is 12, and then 9 times 6 is 54, plus 1 more is 55. So the answer up here would be 6. Then I get 80 as my remainder. So what happens if you are feeling confused about what to think, like what to write in the thought bubble? Because I don't want you to feel confused about that, because what we've been doing today is not really anything new. So I don't want you to get confused now. Here's what you can do. If you're saying, I don't know what to do because I'm not sure what to write in my thought bubble, or I'm not sure what to think over here, like I don't get what you're doing in the thought bubble on the side. All I'm doing is an estimate. I'm just doing an estimate in my head to think of a good place to start. If you're not sure where to start with 5. That's all. The only difference is you might do more than, see, I'm only been having to do one little multiplication problem on the side as my guess and check because I thought about it first. That's all this is about. Just because I stopped and I thought about it, and because I used an estimate, I got an answer that was pretty close, and then I was able to multiply that and then see what answer I would get. Yesterday, you might have done 4 or 5 multiplication problems on the side before you figured out how many times it actually fit. So today, if today doesn't make sense to you, you can keep doing it that way. You're just going to do a little bit more work. If you start with 5, you'll still get the right answer eventually. If you start with 5 and I do 92 times 5, all that's going to happen is this is going to be your answer. And then you're going to say, oh, I think it can probably go in one more time. So then you multiply it by 6, and then you find the right answer. Do you see? So you're just going to have to do a tiny bit more work than you might if you didn't do estimation first. Okay? So it's all about just figuring out where to start. That's all this lesson is telling you. Angelina. Yes. Okay, so she said she did 90 into 630 and got 7. And so then she multiplied by 7, but then you realized it was too much, right? You must have realized it was too much. If you did 92 times 7, and because over here on the side she was thinking 90 times 7 would be 630. So that's okay. If you did that, then all that happens when you do this is then you get 644, which is too much. And then you think, oh, I got to go down 1, and then you pick 6. That's all.
The paper and the thing.
Just hold on. We're not looking over there. We're looking right here at the screen. So, Angelina, if you did that, that's okay. It gave you a good place to start. And then you had to adjust your guess. That's all. That's all. So it just means that you didn't start at 2 and then work your way up. In past years, some kids will start at 2. They'll go 92 times 2 and do all that math, and then go, oh, too small. 92 times 3, and then do all that math. 92 times 4. 92. See how you're there for a long time trying to figure that out? You can't just go up by ones like that. You don't want to start at 2 and work your way up. I mean, eventually you'll get the right answer, won't you? But it's just a lot more work that you're having to do. Let's make sure I have everybody's attention before we keep going. All right. Oh, okay. Your example number 1. So we've got 2 more examples to do together. Then I'm going to let you work by yourself. Positivity. Only positivity.
Negativity is negative.
Right. Here we go. Here we go. Example number 1 says, I paused because I'm waiting for everybody to make sure everybody's on the right page. Example number 1 says, during lunch, there were 144 students in the cafeteria. The cafeteria has a total of 16 tables. How many students can sit at each table? So we're going to divide 16 into 144. So the question is going to be right here, 144 divided by 16, and S is going to equal, they say, the number of students that can fit at the table. So this is where we've been talking about today. Use compatible numbers to find an estimate. That was Monday's lesson, and it was actually a lesson we also did in chapter 3 that was called the exact same thing, estimate quotients. Just gives you a place to start. So if we're estimating by using compatible numbers, I may change 16 to 20 and then change 144 to 140 because 2 can go into 14 7 times. And then if I cross those zeros, my estimate's going to be about 7. So the question is, what do I do with this number 7 now? That gives me a place to start with my guess and check, right? So I'm going to take 16 and multiply it by 7. That way I can see how many times 16 times 7 is, because this is a good estimate. It's a good place for me to start. 6 times 7 is 42. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 more is 11. So my answer is 112. Do I think it could go in again? Do you think it could fit again into 144? Maybe? Yes? Let's try once more and see. So now we're going to do 16 times 8 instead.
Actually, you have to go again after that. I think a 9.
Ooh, again?
Yeah, maybe 9. Yeah.
Well, that wasn't a very good guess
If you
then.
switch to the next slide, you can simply,
Got boxes there.
Yeah, it does. You're just right there on the next slide.
Oh, yours has all the boxes. So they were saying it was what did we say our first answer was? I just had to erase my slide. 112. So hold on. Do you have to do this every time and start a new division problem? They're just trying to show you that when you subtract, see how that number there is 32? So when I divided it by 7, or when I multiplied 6 times 7, I got 112, and then 32 is what's left. That lets you know that because 16 can fit into 32, that means it could go again. So if you try 8, you got what did you get? 138? 120? What did we get? 128. And then when we subtract, it is. That wasn't a good estimate that they gave us, was it? Maybe, yeah, 7. That your estimate should hopefully be closer than that next time. I think they adjusted the numbers a little bit too much. So from 16 they adjusted up to 20. That was kind of hard. That's what gave you a. But imagine if you started at 5, because I told you could do that too, right? So if If you want it, but you don't have to go up by ones each time. On here, they did that as this example just to show you. They went from 7 to 8 to 9. If you pick 7 as your first guess, you could just jump to 9 as your second guess, right? You could always do that, because if you think, oh, that's really far away, I might be able to fit it in 2 more times, then go ahead and jump to 16 times 9.
I'm not saying that you should, but you could even jump to 87.
You could, but that would get you way far from the answer. So that would equal 9. So since S is 9, that means that 9 students can sit at each table. Our guess was 7. Our actual answer was 9. I don't know. That one's a little far away. I'm not like really liking that example that much, but you get the idea. You don't have to rewrite those division problems each time. Here's another one where they estimated 1,252 divided by 32. They changed 1,252 just to 1,200. Change 32 into 30.
You don't want to change both answers down.
Boxes on this one too, okay. So then you should get about 40. Make sure you're doing all of these examples with us. Make sure you're doing these examples. I'll help you by taping your paper after. For now, do this example, okay? We just filled in this part. Okay. I'll have a conversation in a minute with him. Here's my next slide with the boxes. So if I think that it goes in,
It's going to have you do the estimate again.
it is, and again and again and again. So if I multiply, they tried 4. So they were trying to say if 32 went into 125 4 times, I get 128. Since 128 is larger than 125, my estimate is too high. So then you would adjust and try 3. So then my answer is 96, which is better. So I'm going to keep 3 there. Then I'm going to subtract. Got to borrow. Had to do a lot of borrowing there. So then my uh-oh. You know when that happens. Down here, that's where I was, right there. Hopefully you got the rest into your notes onto your paper. 29, since 29 is less than 32, which is this number here, that means I'm okay, right? Remember that if your remainder when you subtract is more, it meant it could have gone in again. So now my number here is 3. I'm going to bring down the 2. Then I'm going to do 32 into 292.
What are we doing? 3 what?
We're trying to figure out what number goes here.
We are?
We are.
6. Oh, okay.
Let me fill that in. This should be 96. So what is a good guess? 32 into 292. What's your guess? Ashley, what's your guess? Just make a guess. 5. She guessed 5. Maybe she guessed 5 because she wasn't sure where to go, and I had been telling you guess the middle, right? Guess 5 and then see what you need to do. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 1 more is 16. So now you've got 160. So we've got at least like 130 more. So we've got to move up a little bit.
Can we try to, can we do 9? It says try 9.
All right, try 9. Oh, it does say try 9. Look at that. 288. That's as good, that's as close as you're going to get. When you subtract, you get 4. So then your remainder is 4. So it's 39, remainder 4.
Oh, yeah, it is 30.
39, remainder 4.
Oh, yeah, dang it. I totally forgot how to do whatever.
Can you give him his pencil back so he can finish this?
Misty Mateo. They did
Thank
that
you.
wrong, didn't
They were,
they? They just put the boxes weird.
yeah, the boxes are always weird. So here's why it looks so strange. Because they're writing the problem like this and having you try it and then like cross it out and start over. The better way is to just do your guess and check like this. If you guessed 4 first, just like we did, and then, oh, that's too much. Let's try 3. See, if you just keep doing your guess and check like that, there's really no reason to rewrite the whole division problem. And that's why the boxes get confusing. I want you to try the guided practice with,
It said the estimated digit is too high, but 4 isn't too high. If you look on it,
4 would have been too much. All right, so try this.